Hey, this is Blake, managing editor of Worn & Wound.
And I'm Zach Weiss, co-founder of Worn & Wound.
Today we've got a selection of contemporary Tudors, including the latest Pelagos 39. Pelagos?
Pelagos.
Pelagos
39.
39.
Yeah.
We have another Pelagos. We have a Black Bay 58. We have a Black Bay Pro. Zach, this is the latest release.
Yeah.
Where do you think this fits in among some of the recent releases?
So I mean, this is the quote-unquote watch we've all been waiting for. I feel like we say that often with Tudor, and it was a really, when it came out to sort of see what that really was. And I think there's some elements to it that were exactly what we wanted, and some elements of it that were a little bit surprising. But now seeing it in this spread here, I think it's interesting to see how it sort of compares with these other watches. Obviously, the FXD was the most recent Pelagos previous to this. It's stuck with that 42 millimeter format, but it had a lot of other oddities to it. It's a fixed lug, bi-directional.
Yeah, it's an unusual watch for sure.
Yeah.
Made for like a very niche kind of specific purpose. The latest, the P39. Is it okay if I say the P39?
I think that's safe.
Is that all right? The P39 seems like it goes into a more, this is kind of a broader use case, right? More for everybody. It's a little bit smaller. It's easier to wear. Still titanium though. Ditches the helium escape valve that we've seen on Pelagoses before.
Yeah, the original Pelagos.
It maybe somewhere lands in between the Black Bay 58 and
maybe
Pelagos.
is it like here? Is it around here? If we compare them or something like.
It's interesting.
That makes no sense. Actually, I think it would be here.
It's kind of
Okay, there we go. There we go.
It's interesting looking at it next to this though.
Yeah.
Right? Like this has much more reflective surfaces. It's got that kind of domed crystal to it. Still has a bit of like a rough and tumble ruggedness to it.
Yeah.
But it's got the sunray finish on the bezel and the dial.
It's interesting looking at them, like, because I think in my mind at least, I was originally thinking, compared to Pelagos, it's part of the Pelagos family. But now seeing it here between these two Black Bay 58s, it's more interesting to me actually how it compares to this, because it really, in size, is very close to a Black Bay 58, right? It's 39 millimeters. It's like 46 point something lug to lug. I forget the exact dimensions. Forgive me. And it's thin. They're both under 12.
Yeah.
But then you look at the subtle differences. It's interesting. So this has a relatively flat crystal, but a thicker bezel. This has a really thin bezel and then more of a domed crystal. And that immediately makes this model look just much more vintage. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas this definitely has like a muscularity to it, a strength to it.
Especially with the 21 millimeter lug span.
21 millimeter lug span. Should we just talk about that?
Sure. So most Pelagos watches all have had 22 millimeter lug spans, including the FXD here with the fixed lug, of course.
Yeah. Just suiting a 42 millimeter case.
It's a bigger watch. This comes down to 39, just like these two. That's a size we're used to seeing a 20 millimeter lug span on. They kept it at 21 here. How do you feel about that?
I'll be honest. That's the thing that bugs me the most
you
about the watch. That is the one thing. Like people, I feel like they had they took the fact that it has this sort of sunray finish really to heart. They're like, that's not the Pelagos. The Pelagos is matte or whatever. I kind of was like, finishing is sort of something to perceive in person. I think it can be beautiful. Maybe it's not necessarily sticking as true to whatever concept we have, but I could look past that if it's beautiful. And I think it's an intriguing finish. I don't know if I've passed judgment on it yet, to be honest. But 21 millimeter lug width really irks me for two reasons.
Okay.
If I were to give you. One, I don't have a lot of 21 millimeter straps. I don't know about you, but over the years of collecting, I have a lot of 20 millimeter. I have a few 18, a few 22, ever more 19s, but never 21s.
21, yeah.
It's so obscure. But then more, it's the proportions to me a little funky. So, on the bracelet here, it fills in that gap. And I feel like you don't necessarily see the lug, like the shape of the lugs as well as you might on a leather strap. Whereas, when you look at a leather strap, these become very pronounced. So I just, I can't help but feel like that's a little bit too wide and would make these lugs feel a little bit too narrow.
Yes, I agree. I think a 20 millimeter lug would have tapered a little more pleasantly to the eye when you take the package as a whole, at least. I think the bracelet is great on this. It definitely has like a pretty muscular presence on the wrist as a result from that.
Caveat, beautifully finished titanium bracelet with their like an extension and a T-fit clasp, which is new.
Yeah.
If you need a dive extension, I do not, but it's there. It gives you that little bit of that extra professional feel.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit of like, will you ever actually take this off of the bracelet? And I think for a lot of people, they wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think so. It comes with a rubber strap as well that actually uses the same end link as the bracelet.
Yeah.
But the finishing on the bezel, on the dial, none of that bothers you. I feel like the bezel is more pronounced finishing than the dial itself.
The bezel does pop a bit, but I mean, it's like a brushed black bezel. It's not, it's certainly not offensive. I'll say like, there is something appealing about how matte the matte ceramic is, and I think that kind of is a unique perhaps texture to the to ceramic itself. I don't know what other materials they tend to use on bezels that'll be matte, because like aluminum's never matte. I guess you could do like a matte DLC or something like that, but it's uncommon.
Yeah.
So there is just something kind of special about that, whereas this feels a little bit more like a metal, but it's certainly not unappealing,
Yeah, and then the dial kind of falls somewhere between like matte and glossy, I feel like.
Yeah, there's a sheen to it, but it's very light. And then you have, so it's interesting to see these combination kind of what's going on here. So you have the applied ceramic lume that we also saw on the Black Bay Pro here. That was, as far as we recall, the first use of that. And then from here, the chapter ring. So I don't know, it's like a mix of things. It's interesting that this one doesn't have the applied markers in the same way. They're applied, but they have surrounds. You almost can't tell the difference, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I wonder if, I feel like that was maybe the intent with this.
Sort of a transition.
They just weren't quite there. Yeah, because it has a similar vibe to it, but it certainly does have a surround to it.
And then this one sort of pointed to a lot of things here. I feel like this seemed like the design decisions were because of the whole FXD Marine National storyline.
Yeah.
But I think it was also a little bit of we're shifting the look of the Pelagos.
Yes.
From the older version with the cutout chapter ring to this, and then this.
Which is maintained here.
Yeah.
Of course. And so, we wondered if it was to keep the total thickness down on this. Pelagos watches had that kind of steeply raked right out with the recesses for the hour markers. So
which I loved, I'll be honest.
Which was great.
That was one of my favorite details.
It looks like they could have done that here.
Yeah, why not? Just bring the chaptering in. I mean, that would have closed the dial down a bit, but that was just a sort of an unexpected detail that made it feel very modern. This feels more like a logical sort of flow from the vintage watches,
Yeah.
But
it's very modern, and I think we referred to it as kind of like a modern take on the Tudor sub. Obviously, in the 70s, the Tudor Submariner had the squared off hour markers on this. I feel like it just works with that snowflake hour hand. Especially compared to this, it's almost jarring to look at that now with the circular hour markers. So this is kind of like, if they did this in a blue colorway, it'd be bang on as a modern snowflake.
I think a lot of people, perhaps myself incled, might be waiting on that because I guess my one, other than the 21 millimeter, I love titanium. I've made this very clear, and I feel like a nice titanium bracelet is really, just a wonderful thing. So like, I probably would eat my own words, and I just wear it on the bracelet, and so it goes. But I have a lot of black dive watches.
Yes.
If I were to add this to the collection, it would just be one of many, and I like them all.
Yeah, and I feel like does this stand out enough? Is it compelling enough to set aside some of the other great dive watches that we have and love wearing, and that we enjoy looking at our wrists with? Yes, I've got a lot of dateless dive watches. It's maybe a problem, but I like them, and they all have something kind of unique about them. This, I feel like, is perfectly fine. I don't know if I would find myself grabbing it over some of the other, including Tudor dive watches.
Well, here's a hypothetical. You go into a store right now, and I know this might not actually happen at this very moment, and they have a display case, and they have these 4 watches in it, and you're dead set on buying a Tudor. Which one would you go for?
I mean, it would be one of these two. And this is the more practical watch, and I wear this watch all the time. I love this watch. However, I like this, but this is brilliant. But I don't wear this as often. It's just like a watch that I love for various reasons. But if it was a watch I was going to be wearing every day, it would be this one. No questions.
Yeah, I feel I do. Once again, biased because I also have the Black Bay Pro. Mine is just off camera here.
On the road.
But it is the feature-rich one for kind of everyday purpose. It's got the date. It's got the GMT.
20 millimeter lug span.
20 millimeter lug span, which I've utilized already. Even though I wasn't going to take it off the bracelet, I did take it off the bracelet, and I like it off the bracelet as well.
Right.
Yeah, you can look at them there. Looks good on brown leather. And there's obvious, no watch is perfect, so there's a couple drawbacks. Obviously, people complain about the thickness. We've said neither of us really find that too annoying on the wrist. For me, I would just wish I had that watch with the weight of this watch.
Yes.
Titanium, it's
perfect.
So lovely.
I agree. And I found myself thinking this watch with that style bracelet and in the same material, I think they'd be right on.
You prefer the modern flowing taper to the
I do like
stepped rivet?
Yeah, I don't. The rivet doesn't offend me, but I prefer a bracelet like that. So, I feel like we keep moving the goalposts on
Tudor.
I know. We keep asking for something. They do, and to their credit, they are delivering in a lot of ways. And I think they do with this watch. I think this is a great watch. I prefer it without the date. However, their goal here to get this thing to a broader audience, it's almost curious that they didn't put a date on it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the more commercially viable option for these things. But I'm glad that they didn't. I wouldn't even mind to see them make the same thing with date and without date. Kind of. The same way that Rolex does it. I don't think there'd be anything wrong with that.
And if it's a matter of thickening the watch a bit, like I said, maybe on paper this is too thick, but on the wrist it's
usable. It's so
completely wearable.
It's totally fine.
That with a date at that size, I really don't think would be too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, we would love to see this in blue. So
start with blue, and then we can do a GMT, and then all of our dreams and a chronograph and everything else.
Tudor, we're once again asking for these things.
But it's a very impressive little setup here. Not to derail you, but it's just these are very classic watches, but they have a really kind of mature look to them all, and I think that these all fall between 3 and 5K and offer really high quality. They're just really Tudor's doing a really good job of dominating that sort of segment of the market, and it's almost hard to think of another 4 watches you'd want to drop in this, if you're really price comparing, you
can't go wrong with any of these 4. That's absolutely for sure. Yeah, and I think the newest watch is another just really solid entry that kind of again leaves us asking, all right, great, where are they going to take it from here? And and that's usually the point that all bets are off with Tudor. So what do you think? Let us know down in the comments below. Where would you like to see this watch go? Does it need a date? Is it fine with that one? We want to hear from you. The full review of this watch is live right now on 101. We will have a link down below. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching.